so you can just come and use our facilities or carry on with your own work, whatever you wish to do. We're open Tuesdays through to Saturdays from 11 AM till 7 PM. Okay, so that's just a little bit about us. The library talk strand is a regular feature that we have here in the library, usually on a Monday evening. Tonight I'm very pleased to welcome Alan Price, who's here to talk about his book, CINEPHILE Poems. I'll just have a few words of intro about Alan. Now, Alan was born in Liverpool and now lives in Camden, London. He's a poet, short story writer, book reviewer and film critic for the magazines London Grip and Magonia. His TV film, A Box of Swan, was broadcast on BBC 2 in 1990, and several of his stories were produced for Radio 3. He's written 2 short story collections, The Other Side of the Mirror, by Citron Press, and The Illiterate Ghost by Ebion Vale Press. 3 collections of poetry have been published by The High Window, The Trio Confessions, that Andrew Taylor in the journal called A Brilliant Collection, Wardrobe Blues for a Japanese Lady, and The CINEPHILE Poems, plus 2 poetry pamphlets about Walter Benjamin's Angels and the music of Gustav Mahler. His latest collection, Unknown Woman and Other Attachments, was published this month by Comparison Press. And I should just add at this point, if you don't already have a copy of Alan's book, copies are available in the BFI shop.
Copies are here.
And Alan's got some.
Afterwards, you have a signed copy in the chat if you want to.
So I shall leave you to.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much for coming this evening. I'd like to begin actually with the cover of the book, the CINEPHILE Poems. It is in fact an image from a film called Grandma's Reading Glass, made in 1900, directed by George Albert Smith. And it was probably one of the first films that cut between a medium shot and point of view close-up. It's a young boy with a magnifying glass, focusing on various objects. It lasts 1 minute and 20 seconds, and I'd like you to see it and be amazed by it. Thank you. Fascinating. What we have a series of close-ups. And what's the first close-up? We have a blurred image of newspaper print. And we go from print to an advert for Bovril. Its product placement in 1900. Astonishing. And then we have the inside of a watch. So we have time, which would be the major preoccupation of cinema. A bird in a cage. Well, that makes you think of you're trapped in the cinema, the cage, you can't get out, you're trapped there in the street, the dark. Grandmother's eye, which looks nervous and apprehensive. And how many eyes have there been in the cinema? Spiral Staircase, Vertigo. I mean, there's so many films that feature eyes. Peeping Tom, Great Peeping Tom by Michael Powell. Then we cut to a kitten, which is just has this charm. There's a kind of femininity in a funny way, I think, with the kitten and the innocence of it, connected with the grandma. And then he tries to take the magnifying glass to her hands because she's darning some socks or something. But no. So I find that very interesting as well. It's almost like, well, what can't be shown, sort of thing, or I don't want you to go too far. It's the beginnings of cinema, sort of thing. And I think, in a sense, the poems I've written, in a way, they take my own magnifying glass to films, details from a film. They magnify them for your attention, and then transmute them into a kind of alchemy. Not exactly base metal turned into gold, but it's like the death of one thing and the life of another, life after death, time after time, and it's a form of translation as well, as a poem is translated from a foreign language. Well, that's the little prelude to the poems. And we'll begin with the first image, the first poem, and it's an epic. Now, I deliberately chose this photograph because I wanted to get away from the familiar image of 2001. We all know that great shot of the ape throwing the bone in the air, cutting to the spaceship, and the Blue Danube playing and so on. This is a terrific photograph. Somebody took it on a station platform in 1968, I reckon. It was shown at the Casino Cinerama, which is the big cinema in Old Compton Street, that's right. What I find quite amusing, if you can see it, not quite the detail of the tube station, the destination itself, is Merton. Morden, sorry. And I love this idea that, you know, your greatest adventure awaits you in 2001 in Morden when you get there, folks. You know, I thought that was terrific. Anyway. Well, the poem. 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968, directed by Stanley Kubrick. For years, I and other fans would ask, what's Kubrick up to now? The waiting, the planning, the secrecy, the final result. Stanley, give me a direction, do. I am so spacey, all for the love of you. Your dawn of man's bone thrown into the sky, cutting me right to the quick. I'd never imagined waltzing in space before, and to gaze at that sentinel, reluctant to be anyone's partner. Maybe the apes should have hugged it longer. Don't pull out all my stops, cried HAL 9000. You're about to really evolve. Not before a roadshow intermission, an aborted rescue, and a psychedelic storm of inner space. Exhausted from tripping, I bust home, wrapped in Cinerama 70mm. Next day, I was reborn. No relaxation for a star child. Dragged out of my deep freeze youth to realize one day I might end up alone, old, dying in bed. Faked objects of Western civilization all around me. I broke a glass of water to imitate that smashed glass of astronaut wine, wondering if all my effort in the face of entropy added up to anything. Stanley, with Arthur C. Clarke, thought it just might, or might not. I must say that I was privileged to see 2001 blown up 70mm on a Cinerama screen in Liverpool, the Abbey Cinerama, long gone. There are very few cinemas. I think it's only the Birmingham cinemas. What's the name of that Birmingham cinema, Adam? Do you remember?
Where?
It's in Birmingham, the big.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I think they have
Yes.
Cinerama facilities
Yeah.
there. Actually.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Number 2. Thank you. Please. Thank you. Matter of life and death. Well, the BFI have just had a wonderful celebration of Powell and Pressburger, which is just fantastically comprehensive the last year. It has always been a favourite, iconic film of mine. There's an interesting book that's been written about this, actually, called A Matter of Life and Death, The Brain Revealed by the Mind of Michael Powell. It's by a woman named Diane Broadbent Friedman. And it's actually an analysis of the neurological base of the Powell and Pressburger film. I mean, it's a complex partial brain seizure in many respects that the poet, Peter Carter, in the film is experiencing. You know, it's a near-death experience and so on. That fascinated me when I read it. Anyway, okay, the poem. A Matter of Life and Death, 1946, written and directed by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. No one has ever dramatized a brain seizure like you guys. An airman hallucinating on Earth and its World War II heaven. Pilot Peter Carter, so English, a fighting poet. One moment in a 3-strip Technicolor village, the next on a staircase to a monochrome beyond. Blaze of aircraft crashing down, a beach, as cycling, you meet, grab the falling handlebars, embrace and kiss. Not some visionary sight of another world, nor a surgeon spying the street with his camera obscura, nor the French messenger who lost his head, nor the smell of fried onions can change my mind. The idea of a sacrifice for love. June got her man. Peter got his woman. Emmerich and you, Michael, got the film you wanted. Amolad determined my fantasy afterlife. I was born, premature, 3 years later, taken out of my pram, nurtured in a cinema, entranced by black and white pearls with an option for widescreen rainbows. Hovering betwixt and between, knowing I'd never starve. Right. 3, please. It happened here. Still, I think one of the most astonishing British films ever made is 1964, also a piece of science fiction. And Kevin Brownlow began this film as a schoolboy, aged about 13, with Andrew Mollo. And over the years, with amateur actors and professionals as well, they eventually got funding from Warner Brothers to finish the film. Sorry, United Artists to finish the film. It was they took them 8 years to make. And of course, it's a what-if film. What if the Nazis had won the war and taken over the UK? In 1980, I came to London, to live in London, and I happened to live not very far away from where they shot the film. It happened here, 1964, directed by Kevin Brownlow and Andrew Mollo. It happened once again, moving to London in 1980, seeing 14 Belsize Square NW3, now Garden Flat 16A, filmed in 1964, to be crushed by an imaginary 1945. I stood outside the long-gone doctor's surgery, remembering the actor inside who'd said that fascism could only be defeated by the use of fascist methods. Pauline recoiled, a nurse who'd escaped a massacre by the partisans, trying to keep active, apolitical, joined immediate action operations, and came to hate both their salute and solutions. The staff restroom with racists talking of the weak and unnecessary. And a sleepy country hospital where she was given a needle to prick the disease of worn-out workers from the Eastern Front. Then, captured by partisans slaughtering German soldiers in a field, asked to help wounded rebels as the rat-tat-tat-tat-tat of the others continued. In the city, a cozy Englishness still occupied the heads of citizens. Shoes clean, buses driven, trains departing, an army chatting up the London girls, kids doing a cheeky goose step, a soldier photographing his mates outside the Albert Hall. With flaming torches, a Nazi anthem was sung by a gang, so solidly British. for their murdered comrade, with widow and son now to be nursed by a comfortable Reich. Right, next one, please. Marnie. Marnie's still one of my favourite Hitchcock films, and even to this day it's controversial and even underrated. Robin Wood, the great film critic, is one of the few champions of this film. I think he put in his 10 best, actually. It's got wonderful performances from Tippi Hedren and Sean Connery. And it's psychoanalysts are fascinated by this film. They show it constantly in seminars and so on, in terms of sexuality and so on, and the female psyche. Anyway, Marnie, 1964, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. Pulling her skirt down over her knees as if they were a national treasure, and then she robbed me. Mr. Strutt knew best, Marnie. He employed a thief, cheat and liar without ever asking for references. Oh, that one, the brunette with the legs. Caught with Mark inside his office during a thunderstorm by a watched racetrack within a boat's cabin and floating in a pool as red flooded the screen. From ink spilt on a blouse to blood on that poker from beating the head of a sailor. Marnie, you're aching my leg. Mother taking her newly blonde daughter to task for desiring men. I don't like him to kiss me. Make him go, Mama. The thief collapsing, then speaking in a child's voice about all her desperate Marnies. Money, sex, attention, and Mrs. Edgar's love not far behind. Needs now paraded with a Hitchcockian gaze. Once, in France, I watched Marnie dubbed on TV without subtitles, undergoing with my girlfriend, messed up by her mother, further anxieties. Right, next one, please. Another Hitchcock. I mean, this is just so delightful. The design of this film is wonderful. The only film that matched the design at Time of the 30s must be the 39 Steps. I mean, people say it's not as deep as the other Hitchcock film, but that doesn't matter. It is so faultless, actually, so brilliantly made. The imagery is so startling. It's just hugely entertaining. You think of so many films of the 30s that are dated. This is just evergreen. The Lady Vanishes, 1938, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. Where did the lady vanish to, Alfred? They searched high and low on the tray, even inside an illusionist's prop, where pigeons flew out, white rabbits peered, and the magician Dopo menaced with his knife. Margaret Lockwood's bang on the head from a dropped flower pot became my bang on the head. I struggled to make the governess materialize. A dual concussion. The feeling I was going mad. Miss Foy never existed, and Margaret and I needed a doctor. Then her name, written on the compartment window, the trained psychiatrist turning out to be a spy, and the lady returned, bandaged on a stretcher. Your box of Alfred tricks conjured them up. Though a nun wearing high heels, the death of a lawyer, and a final gunfight still conspired up your sleeve. Miss Foy, Miss Froy, I'll hum you a tune containing the secret code. English wit and international intrigue shall not grow old. Many ladies vanished in many films yet to come. Some I found, others not. Yet only one with welcoming arms came back to the Foreign Office. After the film, I rushed to the toilet and hit my head on its low-lying ceiling, dazed, wanting to go and lie down, relive your perfect fluid dream, in spite of its test match, ruined by a flood. I love those characters in it. We're talking about the test match. They're great. Right, the next one. The Gospel according to Matthew. This guy was the greatest screen Jesus ever, actually. I mean, he's a non-professional at all. Pasolini was a genius at finding people for films, not actors. You can get amazing performances from. I think he was an art student. I've forgotten his name now. But you know, okay, I have a fondling for old Hollywood biblical epics. I do like King of Kings and Nicholas Ray's film, but the Jesus, the Jeffrey Hunter, is far too clean and sexy and so. This is a wonderful Stark film, and it's a film made by a Marxist, an unbeliever. But this was adored by the Pope. This film, though Pasolini had disgraced himself in the Pope some years later with a very critical article about it. The Gospel according to Matthew, 1964, directed by Pier Paolo Pasolini. What cinephile succor could I offer nuns and children enduring a film approved by the Pope? Timid souls fidget. One shields a little girl's eyes. Had the Vatican blown it? Good Friday's blistering gospel from a Marxist unbeliever? You'll be hated by all because you bear my name. Jesus rebukes, attacks, hectors, and spits out his message, knifing the Pharisees, bursting open the moneylenders, stealing nets from fishermen, abandoned family and friends. Jesus demands that their darkness can only receive his light. Armed with ecstasy and palms, they dash towards Christ. Handheld camera running as if a panther by their side. Then, prowling in a cage behind the backs of soldiers, witnessing a rough-hewn passion. Pasolini casting his own mother as the rejected Mary. Her lost Messiah, born to fight immaculate, returns to disobey, resurrected with a sword. Right, okay. Number 7, please. It. Clara Bow, the lovely Clara Bow. It means sexual appeal. There was a novel called It then. It was a very fashionable novel. And, you know, if you didn't have it, well, you know, you didn't get it kind of thing, you know. You had to have it, the other it, the sex appeal. And she had it. She had this bounce to her as well. Yeah. It, 1927. Directed by Clarence Badger and acted by Clara Bow. Have you got it? You must have. Don't be itless. Clara had it. Canyons of bounce, eyeing up the boss. Charisma with red hair, giving audiences the triple luck. First for the lovesick dames. Second, those horny guys. Third, old ladies who coughed and forgave the shocks as she lingered, lusted, and calibrated box office innocence. Sprawling across an executive desk, pouting and dancing at the Ritz, or devouring her burger and man on Coney Island. To hell with the boss's blonde. This flapper will have him. A shop assistant who can't read a fancy French menu says, "Give me the same as you, but for love-making I translate." I once served long hours in shops, finding no Clara Bows either side of the counter, went to the movies after work, sat through every new helping of female It, scenting Ms. Bow hanging around, urging all to desire, then laugh 'em out loud. Okay. Number 8. We have Bonnie and Clyde. On my part now. Yeah. I should say there's I won't say much about the poem because the poem kind of explains itself. I use the term yonks in this. Now, I'm sure you don't know what yonks mean, but if you come from the north of England, you will do, because it means ages, a long time passing. I think it's a very Liverpudlian phrase. I don't know if it was Mancunian or is it? I don't know. Yeah, anyway, but you know,
That's how I used it in Cambridge.
did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's
Yeah.
travelled then.
Yeah.
I didn't realise because no one mentioned it now.
Yeah, we
Anyway.
used it in Boreham Wood.
Oh, okay, fine. Well, it's travelled then. Okay, Bonnie and Clyde, 1967, directed by Arthur Penn. I should just say actually, the cinema they went to, which is long, long gone, it was one of those really, I mean, three-pit cinemas. I can remember one evening, I mean, it was one of those cinemas, the screen was so tacky that it actually, somebody physically sewn holes in the screen where the holes were, so you can see the stitch marks and so on. The poor manager would come on to explain the film had broken down and so on. And the audience got very rowdy and started to chuck ice cream cones and so on. You know, we see the poor man now. Anyway, Bonnie and Clyde, 1967, directed by Arthur Penn. I dispatched my parents to the Tunnel Road Picturedrome to see Bonnie and Clyde. What they found was Gold Diggers of 1933, a film within a film where Ginger Rogers sang, "We're in the money." Clyde sat in the back row, furious that they'd killed a man. Bonnie sighed, "If you boys want to talk, why don't you all go outside?" Despite all the chatter in the flea pit, my parents, who were never in any money, stuck with the stalls, watching kids rob banks and healthily shoot at rednecks. "Arthur, I thought they'd hate your film, but they loved it. That balletic massacre of an ending, how Bonnie and impotent Clyde writhed in orgasmic displeasure as bullets ripped through their clothes and flesh. It was horrible," said Mother, unfazed. On that night, screen violence, cocoa and toast brought me closer to Mum and Dad. I'd seen the film yonks before. My audience even younger than the Barrow Gang, with not a bloody-minded oldie in sight. Okay, next one please, 9. Well, again, this is a great eye film as well, because it's, you see, not in this image, but there's an eye of the psychopathic killer shown at the beginning. It's still a very disturbing film noir, this Robert Siodmak film. And I love this still, because it's like a crucial moment. The victim, the housekeeper, and the killer, and so on. She's pointing a gun at him. And I just love this composition, particularly. Amazing film. The Spiral Staircase, 1946, directed by Robert Siodmak. In the hotel, an eye watched at the back of a wardrobe till a body blacked out, hands clawing at strangled air. "Babies in arms are not admitted, not permitted," read the bare regulation. Held tight by Mother, I was bundled in to disturb the rules of their dog. If she turned for a second, made me choke on the projected light, then the sound of the theremin and an old dark house would have recharged their menace, fixed me about face in the Cameo cinema, where a New England psychopath killed the weak and unnecessary. A mute examined herself in a mirror, mouth blotted away by his stir. She gathered terror into a scream to break open her voice on the phone for the doctor with a pony, trap, and loving eye to rescue her from the storm. Body on a staircase, iodine for an invalid, a wronged man, a smashed window, the dead girl dumped in the cellar, his flickering, re-emerging to scrape at her throat. Okay. Next one, please. Number 10. Again, probably one of the most remarkable science fiction films ever made. A film that, I mean, its ending is extraordinary. The mysticism of the ending of this film. And everybody's fear of being made miniaturized. It's which is a very Freudian anxiety indeed. The Incredible Shrinking Man, 1957, directed by Jack Arnold. I once dreamt of becoming smaller and smaller. My trousers fell down, and the world ignored me. So how could I possibly help an average man shrinking in suburbia on a black and white film? That insecticide spray and radioactive mist meant disaster for you, Robert Scott Carey, in our world of competing giants, forced to live in a doll's house, then a matchbox. They thought a cat named Butch ate Tiny Bob, but no one dissected the cat to find out. He'd fallen into the cellar, where he rescued cheese from a mousetrap, clung to a pencil to survive a flood, and with a nail killed a spider so as to eat stale cake, all the while hoping his wife would come. But she drove away with Bob's brother, taller than her. When the cake crumbled in your hand, you gave up old hunter instincts. The circle of the incredibly small and incredibly vast consoled. Such infinity of nature and God's plan on your side for further shrinkage, driving every molecule with a greater urge to exist. Okay. Number 11. Page. Lost it. Somewhere. Sorry, that's the page. It's my sticker. Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about the intermission. No goldfish bowl to show you, so just
Blame it on Bergman. Bergman, yeah.
there's a Bergman hesitation, yes, a desperate perhaps, just in the film. Persona. I suppose that sometimes you see films that might almost, or works about a change in life. This was one of them, certainly. I was very young when I saw this. Persona, 1966. Directed by Ingmar Bergman. Psychoanalysis in a rundown art house sex cinema. Aged 18. I didn't understand what this meant, Ingmar. You split open my physical, mental, and spiritual defenses. Alma and Elizabeth caressing each other's luminous faces. Silenced actress and talkative nurse of vampirish moods. The psychiatrist's letter, a foot injured by shards of broken glass, self-immolation of a Buddhist monk on TV, a monologue, ravishment by the sea, the fights, babble of words, the merging of identities. Alma climaxing on nonsense speech, uttering a desperate perhaps. Then the projector broke down in the movie, not the theatre one whirring on that day, and a skeleton dance for the beginning and end of cinema. Speechless, I escaped to a freezing street. I stared at the jigsaw image poster. It was snowing. Catharsis, perhaps. Right. 12. Oh yes. White heat, yes. White heat. White heat. The fantastic white heat. A couple of these poems, you see, I put down directed by, usually it's a director, but some of them said acted by, which I did with the It poem by Clara Bow, and this one is acted by James Cagney. Someone wrote a book called James Cagney Auteur, and in many ways he's the auteur of this film, I think. Walsh was a marvellous director as well, especially of action cinema. It's still a ferocious film to see all these years on. White Heat, 1949, directed by Raoul Walsh and acted by James Cagney. A gang member scalded by steam from the mail train, then bandaged up and left to die, waiting for the dog. Now, if I ever burn myself badly at my kitchen stove, indifference will return in the form of Arthur Cody Jarrett, snarling from his pain and lust in mother's open arms, till his girlfriend enters, spits out her gum and demands a fur coat, shivering treacherously in their hideout. Those tops of Jarrett's world kept peaking in madness, a routine killing whilst gnawing away on a chicken leg, epilepsy as a manic protest at a prison dining hall, and that firing of your gun at the chemical storage tank, exploding with a blast to ape your psychotic torment and melt down audiences for an atomic age. All I ever had was Ma. She was the gang's engineer. Her son, the ruthless driver, despising the rest, plagued by headaches from hell, and incurably in love with Mum, especially when she was shot by Cody's gal. All the punk gangsters that came after Cagney merely lit the fuse he'd already planted in our brains. Okay. Next one, please. Right, the time machine. Time machine. I have such a childhood affection for this film. And George Powell, he made this wonderful special effects. You can see his War of the Worlds is still the best War of the Worlds, I think, made in the 50s. Well, the Spielberg was not bad. But the Time Machine is quite interesting. This wonderful Victorian creation, Time Machine, after the film, was just abandoned. And there was a guy who found it one day in a car boot sale in America, actually, for about $50 or something like that, and fixed the whole thing up, apparently. But now, of course, it's a prize cinema piece of prop, in fact. You can buy little toy time machines like this online for about $5 as well. You must order one. The Time Machine, 1960, directed by George Powell. It is New Year's Eve, 1899, and we shall travel in time to the year 802701, stopping off at 1917, 1940, and 1966 to sample the wars. He has all the time in the world, declares Philby, the botanist friend of time traveller H. George Wells, who returned to Weena, the childlike woman to be woken again from her docile existence. In 802701, the Eloy played in the sun, ignored old books, crumbling to dust, and metal rings you could spin to speak of conflict and disaster. The Morlocks took all the blonde Eloy calmly underground to eat them up, making the cruel point that a species must always grow and develop. Yet, if George had taken time out to speed to the year 635-427-810, then Mother Earth, now a dying wasteland, would have filled him with dread. All this was filmed in 1960, when I, an 11-year-old, desired a time machine and futures to play with. abandon all my dead schooling, stay alive, curious, and unbound. That's it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Alan. Alan is now going to be in conversation.
Oh, no,
not yet.
there's a lift
Little bit
before
to
that. Something I did say in the booklet for this month is if anyone here has a poem to read about film only, 1 page only, please, about the film experience, about an actor, director, film, whatever, absolutely delighted to hear it if anyone has.
Yeah.
You have some, great. Could you just stand up and give your name and the title?
It's open and stand up.
Yeah, of course, come and stand here if you want to, whatever,
Okay,
whatever you feel comfortable with.
Thank you very much. My name's Pip. I wrote this at 3 o'clock in the morning. I had a really bad migraine.
Oh,
so
right.
a migraine is like having a cinema in your mind.
Yes.
So this is the nonsense that I came up with. It's called Plato's IMAX. Okay. The cinema is the only box that I want to fit into. A place to confront myself. A big box with a screen. To intervene. To disrupt. Interrupt. Erode my preconceived truths. A multimodal filmic dream. It's so much more than it seems. To scream in visual consciousness streams and laugh from the heart-shaped parts. A tear or two escapes from my eyes. I still try to hide. And even though you can't see anyone in the cinema, you know you're there. And everyone can dream. It's like walking or sitting in a boulevard of broken scenes. I'm still in the film several days after watching it. It's like a second cinema in my mind, a delayed design. T.S. Eliot might say, let us go then, you and I, to the cinema in my mind. So would Plato like the cinema, or would he just dismiss it as a fancy shadow party in a cave? And what would the perfect cinema look like anyway? Whose cinema is it anyway? For me, the cinema is like a moving equinox, a visual paradox. Films like rocks, shocks, what do they unlock? This image-based jukebox. Plato's IMAX, a box within a box, a meta-screen, a cinematic dream. Moving archetypes, these likes, these dislikes. It's like riding a cinematic motorbike through 1,000 storied possibilities. This gift of speculative changing realities, we can explore different worlds, really difficult things within. So give me some popcorn, please. Large, salted, and then we can begin. Thank you. I'm from the real Merton-ish. You know, the Merton Morden thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
yeah.
That's right, yeah, I live there as well.
Yes.
And it is an odyssey. Right.
More than certainly is, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Another part? No?
I've got
Yeah,
one.
sure.
Yeah.
Please, just come up and.
Yeah. It's actually,
Give us your name.
it's not my poem, it's my father's poem, and he really wanted to come and read it today, but
Oh,
he
right.
had an emergency dentist appointment.
Oh.
Took 2 hours, and he didn't have the strength to come
Oh,
in.
yes.
But he's Timothy Addis, translator,
I know
poet.
Tim.
That's
Tim.
right.
Yes, we
Tim.
know him. Yeah.
Yeah,
Tim was a good friend of ours, yeah.
of course, yeah. He
Yeah.
really wanted to be here.
I know
so
he
sorry,
did.
sends
Yeah.
his apologies, but
Yeah.
got Stunt Reader in instead, so
Okay.
here we are. And it's a poem he translated from Elsa Lasker-Schuler, German poet. And it's not about a film, it's about not being in love with a film, but being in love in the cinema. So that's what it is. It's called Komm mit mir in das Cinema. I won't read it in German. So, come with me to the picture house where we can find what once was ours. Yes, love. Your hand shall nestle in my hand, by darkness overcome, when, quite suddenly, an elephant trots out its jungle trombone, or when, on screen, we apprehend a croc's brain roasted misses, snapping at us from burning sand, then we shall have our kisses.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else? Oh, thank you. Right. Go on, please, thank you.
Hello, my name's Simon Wood.
Yes,
Some of these films I saw when I was very small,
yes.
because in the 60s they would show on television virtually anything,
They did indeed.
and children saw an awful lot. I remember we got a telly in 1960, and in time for the Olympic Games, and Harry Carpenter would say things like, I was 6 and my sister was 3, and sit beneath the telly and see Harry Carpenter say, "He's a really interesting character, Cassius Clay. We call him the Louisville Lip." And we'd also see loads of films on something called Film Matinee. And then when BBC Two came, incredible films, at a very young age. It's called Film Matinee. The BBC used to show films willy-nilly for free, whatever they could find for quiet afternoons of curious childhood. We saw The Exterminating Angel without thinking, simply accepted the story. Indiscriminately on the box they'd show film from the camps at the end of World War II. We sat there taking that in too, though my father, who had fought, was silent. Large pits full of stick-thin bodies. They wouldn't show it now. Pity.
Anyone else? No? Oh, we just got one more.
Louise, yes.
Yeah,
Well, let's talk about them.
Louise Warren, a very good friend of mine, very fine poet. She's written a poem about Walt Disney. It's called Walt. Sadly, she's not very well this evening. She can't be here. She'd love to be here. But Adam's going to read.
Yes. So very sorry that she can't be here.
Yeah.
Walt, opposite Walt Disney. Walt, more real than real. You give me each hand-coloured frame at speed, a better life. No gaps, no cracks, nothing blown, just skies of rose and lemon, sunrise, dark when it comes. It's always bright and stashed with stars. This room is never empty. Each cut swept up. At night you process dreams, hang pearls from trees, my breath held in will freeze on this. I won't wake up until the credits roll, and then play it back. Another death, this time off screen. Her tiny legs just folded up. His chair thrown back, refused to fly. Another bright blue day, as blue as this, you say. The edges turn to black, then pale to hardly there. Then music, light,